And last but not least today, we have Russ Tracy from the University of Vermont. It's good to see you.
It's truly a pleasure being here. Let me know if you can't hear me. I don't, it's okay. I'm getting okay. Excellent. Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure being here. Having worked with Bruce for what, 40 years or close to it. And he's deserving all the stuff you're hearing. It's okay. Just put it there. Yeah. Don't make a, yeah. And this is going to be a little different. I was tempted to say they saved the best for last, but having listened to all the other talks, that's patently untrue. So I'll simply say that this is my feelings about CHS and about some of the science that's been done there and the leadership that has emerged in CHS. So, superb scientific contributions and outstanding leadership. So when we get to the scientific, sorry, I'm wiping out your slide here. CHS is protein in nature, but it wasn't designed that way. It was designed as a cardiovascular disease study. So how did this happen? How did we become so involved in so many other diseases? And it's my opinion that CHS was in the lead in defining a certain new large-scale, high-impact concepts. And I list three up here that I'm going to talk a little bit about. One is that other chronic diseases are risk factors for CVD and vice versa. So risk factors aren't isolated things in and of themselves. They come from what else is going on in you that it often has this feedback mechanism. Other chronic diseases are risk factors for each other. And so the same thing, there's nothing special about CVD in that sense. It's that and I'll give you some example a little bit. And then inflammation and immune dysregulation are a major contributor to points 1A, 1 and 1A. And then finally, the relationship of soluble risk factors to outcomes changes dramatically over the lifespan. And CHS, I think, was the first to really make this clear. So risk factors about, well, we'll get into that in more in a sec. So the overall interdisease impact, CHS not only does cardiovascular disease, well, that's the way it was sort of sold initially. We do a variety of things. Only several of them are listed there, including pulmonary disease, renal disease, diabetes, frailty, and dementia. Some of these had separate support as ancillary studies, like the great late Lou Culler's dementia R01 in CHS. And those of you who know Lou, I speak with his wife, Alice, frequently, and she's doing quite well, despite an initial shock and hard time. Why can't I get that to go away? No, that's wrong. Help. More. I just want to go backwards and get rid of this. There you go. Now, how can I go backwards? Just up? Yeah. Come on. No, it's not taking me up. Yeah, would you help me, Tom? Yeah, perfect.
This
Right.
one? That one?
That one.
Great.
So the working group concept really emerged, in my opinion, this is a highly opinionated talk, with David Siskovic and Jeannie Olson, and an idea they really hatched. Jeannie was at NHLBI and David was an important part of CHS. And they hatched this idea of getting more junior investigators involved. Terry Manolio and the rest of NHI were pushing us to do that. So they set up a meeting for all of the RO8 kind of awardees that didn't have funding and didn't have a real project. And we had a large number of people show up. Some may even remember doing that. I don't know if we have anybody. Yeah, Ken Muckamal's raising his hand. And yeah, okay, so we know, yeah, Jorge. Yeah. So it was a very successful, but it had a secondary outflow, which was that, oh, great, what do we do with all these people? And so we started a working group system that Bruce was an early adopter of this kind of approach and has used it consistently now to great effect through a wide variety of studies. Let's see, so I'm going to use arrows. I want to go there. Yeah. So the overall interdisease impact of all those working groups was to identify that all of these outcomes were related and had a real, and others that I didn't list. If you see the red arrows, now picture them all move to pulmonary disease. I didn't want to make the drawing because it would be too hard to understand, but diabetes, they're all linked to diabetes. It goes on like that. So overall concept 101A, each of the chronic diseases contributes to the progression of each of the others. They are risk factors. There aren't external things that necessarily happen except for genes that sit on top of this. It's really happening by this a gestalt of injury to you and how it plays together. It was a novel concept, and I think CHS was the one that really brought it together. How does it happen? Well, obviously functional decline seems at least partly responsible, just makes common sense. You know, if you lose a proper oxygenation because of lung disease, you're going to have a decline in renal function because the kidney is being oxygenated properly. So, okay, I got that. But it seemed there was something else that was sitting in the middle. And CHS led the way into finding the second cause, which was inflammation. Picture yeah, and you got to picture the same set of red arrows. But all of these things are known to be inflammatory in one way or another. And all of that then feeds back and makes changes through, among other ways, the acute phase reaction, which can be chronic. It's another thing we showed. And the immune dysregulation that's associated with inflammation. So as an overarching concept, we have this notion that inflammation plays a powerful linking role into connecting the impacts of the chronic diseases. Bruce saw the logic of this on and participated in most of the early CHS inflammation papers. I did a quick PubMed of Passady and inflammation, Passady author, inflammation and title abstract. And there are 82 papers that are including the very earliest CHS papers that show this concept. And it's been a pleasure working with Bruce. He often led an experimental design, analysis, and the logic of the paper. He's very good that way. Now, number three is a biomarker consideration, changes over time. We love to have the concept of the variable causes the disease. But what we now know, because all those diseases are inflammatory, we can, and you see the inflammation go up over time, that the disease can cause changes in the variable if in fact it's associated with inflammatory impacts and things like that, like a chronic acute phase. And of course, genotype lays on top of this in a very important way, as we've heard from lots of people today, in much more detail than I can express it. And as Rob pointed out, we're doing other omics as well that'll contribute to this same kind of thing in studies like MotorPack and TopMed and wherever. And as an example, I usually use this. So risk is on the left, cholesterol is on the left, CRP is on the right. In the young, it's the variable causing the disease, and it's a straight line up, very squared away. In the middle-aged, we start to see a hook in cholesterol, well-known hook function, where there's also an increased risk in very low cholesterols. And in the bottom, in the elderly, it's often, there's no risk in high cholesterol. And there's only Walt Ettinger and I published a paper many years ago showing that the risk is in low cholesterol amongst the elderly. And if you look at CRP, exactly the same thing's going on. But CRP is always a straight line to the right. Why is that? Well, see, they're both affected by inflammation. ApoB is a negative acute phase reactant, it goes down, especially with high inflammation, whereas CRP is a positive acute phase reaction and always goes up. So even though we're doing the same sort of thing here, you don't recognize it depending on whether it's a negative or a positive acute phase reactant. And we've used that in many papers. Jorge, there you wrote a paper on, I think, adiponectin, where we showed the U-shape curve that occurs in the elderly. As you got older, the risk went up at both ends. You're somewhere between the middle and the old, like that, in a design like that. So we've seen it more and more, and you need to take it into consideration when you're trying to use risk factors for disease prediction. And I think this was a major contribution by CHS. So in number three, in early life, biomarkers are indicators of future outcome. However, in later life, outcomes start impacting the biomarkers, often due to increased inflammation and a chronic acute phase. Other things can play a role. Reduced renal function can cause a biomarker to be falsely elevated because it's not being excreted right. There's a number of contributors here, and that's why it's the gestalt of all those diseases that CHS was so good at pointing out that really ends up being the thing of interest. When it comes to leadership, that's the other point I was making. Anne did a wonderful job of highlighting the early leaders in CHS. I wasn't here for her talk, so how can I say that? She very kindly had sent me her slides, and I went over them carefully, so I know pretty much what she said, unless she went off target and talked about all kinds of stuff. I don't know. That doesn't sound like Anne. So as the study kept going, new leadership needed to emerge. And chief among that leadership was Bruce. His overall thought, as far as I can tell, was to expand CHS's collaborations. And it was showed in so many places. creating Charge, joining Top Med, joining Mark VCID, and many others. So it was a visionary change in leadership that led to where we are today. And he very stubbornly, I don't know how this works at home, but in the science world, he very stubbornly refused to accept no as the final status for the CHS contract and worked really, I don't overuse that word, worked tirelessly on R01s to continue to support CHS. In my book, that's superb leadership. And it comes from Bruce. So,
Um,
whoop. Excellent. My last slide, boy, you just can't control those guest speakers, you know, it's hard. Bruce didn't turn out someone like Sarah on his own. And if he was left on his own, he'd probably starve to death, or, you know, there'd be a mess. No man is an island. Some of you, like Paula and I do, know Sue well. She is a stalwart, smart as hell, and an incredible partner for our friend here. So I just can't end this story without mentioning Sue and how important she is in Bruce's life. And I think that's my final slide.